Hello, welcome to the New School HR podcast. This is episode 4 of season 2, and this episode is titled Diversity and Inclusion. So, this is going to be an overview. Traditionally, I've run sessions on this, worked policies on this, but I thought I'd just give a bit of my spin on it and just give an overview of the sort of things I incorporate. So, yeah, enjoy. So, if you go onto Google or Wikipedia or any other search engine, you'll find a very broad range of explanations for what diversity and inclusion is. But the best one I've ever come across was one that was on a set of materials that I used. So, diversity, simply put, a difference of identity, thoughts, and differences within your team. I think that pretty much sums it up, and that's what I try to celebrate when I am leading a team or incorporating this kind of session into something. In terms of inclusion, listed as an environment that welcomes and leverages diversity to do its best, which again just really resonates with me. I think when you try to overcomplicate it, that's when people sort of either switch off or almost become intimidated by the whole subject. So I really like those examples. I've stolen that from somewhere that I've used previously. So disclaimer, I have stolen it, but I do think that's the best sort of summary that I've seen. So you can have a diversity of people. We're all from different backgrounds. Even if you're born, I'm born in the UK, but I am of mixed heritage, shall we say, and raised in a very specific part of London. So there's already many different influences in how I think, rationale, things I've observed growing up. And I think that is what, for me, is the best part about having a diverse team. This then gives you a diversity of ideas. So the last team I worked for, we were regional based, and there was 5 of us from different parts of the country, and it was amazing to see some of the thought processes and some of the things that the team would come together and think about. In some instances it'd be more measured, in some more aggressive, and that's the kind of thing that you need when you have a team. I remember the person that put me to a business partner role, and I remember I was part of a HR advisory team, and I always wondered what my part was, sort of thing. And this was a HR operations manager, and they said to me quite clearly that when they built their team, they looked at it as a football team, and they used to select people to the strengths of the team. So my strength was that I'd actually just finished a management role as opposed to a HR role. And that would help the team in terms of understanding. But then my main stakeholders, that's the kind of approach that they needed. So I didn't really I did get it. I did understand it. But until I actually got there and was doing it, I didn't get it. So yeah, that's quite cool. Statistical data says race and ethnic diversity causes a 33% increase in profit. Diversity in gender, 21%. I just saw that somewhere. I don't really know if that has any real meaning, but one thing I do remember is in the last company I worked for, within the London region. Well, do you know what? Forget about the last company I worked for. I think living in London, there's different clusters of communities. I think it's the same in Birmingham. I don't really know many other places too well like that, but I do know in London and Birmingham specifically, there are diversities. Where I live currently is not in either of those places. But again, there's specific pockets of ethnic groups. And so I'd imagine if you had a team that was able to understand and accommodate those kind of customers, then yeah, I guess that's true. The other thing is to make sure that if you do have a diversity and inclusion policy or training, that it is aligned to the company values. Now, if you have a company values sort of framework, or you have a mission or a statement, it's going to cover some sort of diversity and inclusion. So it's always worth knowing what that is and how you want to incorporate that into your work. I think as HR professionals, we probably use the diversity inclusion quite a lot in our decision making, and it's probably one of the things that naturally we have to factor into our day-to-day job. So it's quite important to be comfortable with it. I'm quite fortunate, I think, because being mixed, if you like, I don't really fit into any sort of stereotype. Well, I don't think so anyway. The irony is that people who hear my name expect one thing, and then people who meet me are expecting another. So it's interesting. But yeah, I think that allows me to sort of flow through life, if you like. And I'm quite open as a person anyway. I'm not really dismissive of much. So yeah. So you can't really do a diversity and inclusion conversation or session or anything without touching on the Protected Characteristics Equality Act of 2010. So, the Equality Act of 2010 legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. That includes outside of work people. It replaced previous anti-discrimination laws with a single act, making the law easier to understand and strengthening protection in some situations. It sets out the different ways in which it's unlawful to treat someone. Do you get that? Good. So, we always talk about the 9 protected characteristics when we refer to that statement. So, the good news is I don't have to get you to guess because you can't guess. So, in no particular order: age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity. Did you listen to the previous episode? Race, religion and belief, sex, not that kind, and sexual orientation. So, those are the communities of people that, effectively are covered. Now, for me, look, you have to point it out to people when you're doing certain things. So, for example, one of the ones I see more so not so much now, but one of the ones I used to see quite a lot of is the disability. Well, it's common, isn't it? Disability. But the other one was age. I think age is one of the easiest ones to kind of miss, if you like. And that can be either way, either those older or younger than someone. I think we see it more so with those who are younger, to be fair. But yeah, I have seen instances. And it's quite... You don't think much of it, but then when you're pulled up on it, it can be difficult. I think another one that kind of gets... I think people sort of try to walk around, if you like, is religion and belief, especially certain religions. I worked for the retailer, and you could tell that managers who were not from a specific religion were just really uncomfortable with how to manage situations. And I think for me, I'm fortunate enough to understand the community quite well. And I think, look, it's about treating people fairly, isn't it? That's the whole point. So, yeah. Now, the one I do want to point out is disability discrimination. Because I think we all have the perception, right? The stress or mental health card. I was a bit like that myself, maybe 5-6 years ago. I was a bit like, yeah, well, it's nonsense. That's just being blunt and honest. But as I've worked through the HR advisor role, through to where I am today, I realized that whether or not it's true or not, it is something that you do need to get underneath, if you like, and understand, and that each person's individual circumstances are different. And I think that's another key thing. Each case related to mental health is different. The triggers could be different. The reactions could be different. For some people, being in the workplace is the best thing. For other people, it's not. So it's really something you want to be mindful of. So the thing to think about is the physical or mental impairment. And the other thing I say to people is check if the condition is something that has been around for the individual or they've been receiving treatment for over 12 months. Because I have had instances where mental health has become an issue because someone has been absent, but nobody knew that they were taking medication for it. No one knew that they were receiving treatment because it was outside of work, so why would they if the individual doesn't say? And then what you find yourself is that then becomes a disability. So you might only be hearing about it for the first time, but it's something that has been underpinned and sort of in that person's life for a long time. I don't remember the correct terminology for it. I probably should. But I think this is the whole point of the podcast, right? It's about being real. So in terms of a disability, the way it's sort of scripted, if you like, is a physical or mental impairment that prevents someone from doing a day-to-day day. I can't remember if it says day-to-day living, but it's basically something that prevents someone from living what is considered to be a normal day-to-day life with normal routines. My first question is, what is a normal routine and what is day-to-day life? But anyway, the reality is, if somebody's got a broken hand and they can't use it, or, I don't know, let's not think of examples, let's use a broken hand. If they've got a broken hand, there's a hell of a lot of things they can't do. So that does impair their day-to-day activity, doesn't it? So yeah. I think, for me, it's always a duty to make reasonable adjustments. I'm quite comfortable and okay with reasonable adjustments. I think that's the thing. I'm not somebody who thinks that we need to, or we're conceding defeat, if you like. And I think the other thing with disability is to think about the association with their disability as well. So I think that's where a lot of people, managers or whatever, go amiss. So, for example, the employee may not be disabled, however, the employee's child might be disabled. And actually, if they're being treated differently, then that can have an impact. So, I'm now going to jump into discrimination. So, the first disclaimer I'm going to put out there is, like I just mentioned about association, this also counts in that sense as well. So, 3 types of discrimination. There's much more detailed explanations. I'm not going to even try and attempt to say that these are the most detailed in the world. So, bias is a tendency to lean in a certain direction, either in favor of or against a particular thing. To be truly biased means to lack a neutral viewpoint on a particular topic. Somewhere along the line, bias took on a negative connotation. We tend to think it's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Make of that what you will. Stereotype. A stereotype is a mistaken idea or belief many people have about a thing or group that is based upon how they look on the outside, which may be untrue or only partly true. Stereotyping people is a type of prejudice because what is on the outside is a small part of who a person is. We following that? Prejudice. An unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand or without knowledge, thought, or reason. Any preconceived opinion or feeling, either favorable or unfavorable. Unreasonable feelings, opinions, or attitudes, especially of a hostile nature, regarding an ethnic, racial, social, or religious group. We all understanding that? So look, in short, your managers and you need to be mindful of your actions and be mindful of your interactions in or around people. I see too many times people just say really fucking stupid things, like even HR people. Even senior managers, some of the things you hear is just fucking stupid and uneducated. And so I think when you see it, call it out. Now, me, I'm quite funny like that. I'll call it out, and I'll just kind of make it worse for the individual. Some of the things I've come across in my time. My first location that I sort of became a senior person, the senior team was predominantly one race, which I'm not. And some of the things I used to witness and be asked and be told, and even the way feedback was given to me based on what well, it depends because I'm mixed, so whatever people thought I was on the day, that's the honest truth. I think the worst one I remember was when I was told, that is your African side coming out. Because I refused to let my drivers go down side roads which were icy. I'm not quite sure what being African would have had to do with my drivers not having the correct footwear and being able to go down an icy road on the 23rd of December. So there you go. Think about it. People will say to me, is that something that really happens now? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It does still happen. So be mindful of what you hear. I think there's a lot of things that are heard in jest or, around a sort of break time environment. And it's our jobs and our managers' jobs to make sure that that's not happening. So let's talk about some money. So I have here some figures from 2018-19. Actually, I didn't even bother to look if there were... No, I did look, actually. I did look to see if I could find something. Obviously not well for 1920. But hey, who knows what happened in 2020. So I've got here some... we got maximum awards, median awards, and average awards for some of our favorite discrimination types. And unfair dismissal. So unfair dismissal in the 18-19 Premier League season, the average award was £13,000. The maximum award was £947,585. Who did they sack? The Queen. Race discrimination. If I was ever going to play a card, my average award would be £12,487. Maximum award, £33,660. Seems, okay. Sex discrimination. Median award, $8,774. Maximum award, $24,103. Disability discrimination. The average award, this is the highest in the table, £28,371. Maximum award, not the highest, £416,015. That's a funny amount for change, isn't it? Religion, belief, discrimination. The average award, $4,767. Maximum award, $12,000, bang on. Now then, this one is one of the ones that I saw come up when I was somewhere previously. And I don't know if we had two instances, but we had one. And that's when I realized not to make... Well, actually, I say realize, I don't make jokes, okay? That's a disclaimer. But that's when I realized that if I see something, I need to stop that shit right there and then. I mean, okay, you'll probably say you should have done it anyway. But yeah, so age discrimination. Coming in at the third highest maximum award, £172,070. Average, which is the Second highest, 26,148. Now, actually, no, we come on to it later, so I'm glad we've covered the cost. So look, some companies will actually look at the figures and look at how to call a settlement agreement in terms of if they've done something like this. But obviously, again, it's a protected characteristic, and the fact that it's law. I don't know if everyone's just going to sign a piece of paper. I mean, I don't know this because, well, I wasn't involved in the cases or the case I was thinking of in my head, but so I don't really know what happened there. But in terms of myself, I've only actually ever done two settlements now. I've done two. Neither of them was linked to a discrimination or an unfair dismissal, so I can't really comment. I think the other thing is that settlement doesn't mean a person can't attempt a claim. I think there's this perception now. Again, I've not seen anyone try to, but if it's a legal thing, maybe they'll bypass the tribunal and get a solicitor. That's what I've heard can happen. Again, I've never been in that sort of position. I think the thing to bear in mind is that in a smaller organization, these kind of numbers we're talking about off of a P&L result could be the difference between a salary increase for your team or bonus for your team. And when you think of a manager and their responsibilities and the fact that you're paying them an enhanced rate to be a manager, is to make sure that these things don't happen. And so therefore, when recruiting for a manager, we should think about their natural behaviors. And we should think about the examples of, if they're internal anyway, think about the examples we've seen when they're being tried and tested. Because that's generally when things kind of go to pot. And you get the stupid reaction is what I sort of call it or refer to it as. So the next thing I want to talk about is how do we prevent these things? So I kind of said about some things, didn't I? But in layman's term, the first thing is seek out information. You know, I think as a HR professional, we should be keeping current with affairs. I think that's one thing that always helps me. Be aware of what's going on in your store. Be aware of things that are being mentioned. You know, this can be done through employee forums or if you've got anonymous feedback or even in one-to-ones and stuff. I think it's quite important to get a sense of that. I always think of, you know, the fact that if we had someone new to the team from a different background or a different religion or whatever, I would always try to make the time to observe certain things, like, you know, if there was certain, I don't know how to explain it, certain sort of beliefs or thought processes or whatever. I myself would always try to understand, you know, try and get a learning of what it is that is taking place. You know, I'm generally interested in stuff anyway. But, you know, I think I learned through the retailer, you know. There was many different people there. I worked with and managed, you know, a team of quite a few. And within that team, there was across all the different sort of characteristics. So that was a massive education piece for me. I think when you manage a team operationally is very different because that's when you get to find out all the different stuff. You'll get to find out all the different sort of, I don't want to say excuses, that's the wrong word to use, but you get to find out all the different things that you need to know, if that makes sense. Because there are different events or whatever that can be exploited. So actually understanding things in the first instance does educate you. So For example, one of the things I always remember was Eid. And I remember when I got to the last company I worked for, which was not really a diverse workforce, and for the month of Ramadan, one of our drivers basically, I can't remember what he requested, but anyway, there was a formal request, and I said, look, we can make exceptions, we can do things, but obviously if that person is the only person in the role, we can't just stop the operation. So looking at solutions, I think it was around moving hours or something. So we said, we could do, half shifts or half hours or whatever. But basically we worked it out to be a way that we was able to get an agency to cover, but what he didn't work would obviously be unpaid, which is reasonable. That person didn't like that. And I think that's the kind of thing, it's being available to understand and learn, to be able to help your managers. Another thing is, again, certain faiths, so this isn't just exclusive to Muslims or anything, but certain faiths, they bury their dead the next day. And I've seen it where managers have been pissed off that an employee has phoned in and said they got a funeral, someone's passed away and they need tomorrow off because they got a funeral to go to. And you just think to yourself, are you fucking stupid? Like, have you actually gone to see whether that's factual in the first instance? So, yeah, seek out the information. Don't assume. Yeah, don't just assume someone is trying to abuse you or something or exploit something. Actually do the research. I think one of the things that we assume is that we only need to train our managers in how to work in an inclusive way and consider diversity. But I think that's incorrect. So one of the things I think was really good at the first company I worked for was everybody had some form of diversity training, if you like. It was actually embedded into the induction. And, it's not a case of they need the full out thing, but I think even if it's something within a policy that is explained to people that, this is the expectation. I think at the retailer, I think we even had like a very short video. I think the second company I worked for, again, I was actually working on something for the training actually, and there was actually company videos. So I think something that just celebrates it really, and explains that there is almost a zero tolerance on such thing if it's a breach. So I always think that's a good thing. As I said, have a policy. There are companies with representatives for diversity and inclusion. I've not come across one myself. Actually, I think where I am today, they have tried to, I don't know, maybe in the past or something. But look, I think that's a good thing. I don't really know how it works, so if anyone does, let me know. I've said earlier, if you see something wrong, say something. I think that's the worst thing. I think it's when people just kind of walk past it, or people just laugh it off, or people say, it's just a joke, I don't think that's the right behavior. And I think that also means that your culture's not right either. So I always enforce that. Say something. Myself, like I said earlier, I don't really sort of go out of my way to make anyone feel uncomfortable or anything. But yeah. And I think the other thing is that if you get grievances and stuff for this kind of thing, I think you need to take it seriously. And I'm quite fortunate. Everywhere I've worked, that stuff is taken very seriously. But I know there's places out there that just would immediately sort of be dismissive about it. And if you're the HR person there, then you need to do something differently. That's not acceptable. The next thing is, I don't know if every company has this, but whistleblowing facility. I think that's quite important as well, to make sure that if there is one, that people know about it. And if responses come through to it, they're acted on and treated in the right way. a whistleblowing facility is usually provided by an external provider. So it's someone that would be actively trying to make sure that, the case, if you like, is handled in the best appropriate way. And obviously, when you get that information, it's about how you respond to it. So if you don't have an individual's name, then it's about how you actually roll that thing out. So I've not had one on the back of whistleblowing, but I have had instances where we've had to do something on the back of an incident. And, the individual involved will obviously have whatever, whatever the action is. But on the back of it, you want to do something as well. So, I used to subtly sort of give out diversity training on the back of maybe an incident. I'd actually just roll it to my whole region. So I used to have like maybe 3 areas in one region. I just rolled it out to everyone. And I think the right thing to do is to acknowledge that there's been an incident. You don't have to go into specifics because the training that you have will cover all bases anyway. And the reality is, when you do the training, I remember when I sat in front of a group of managers and was going through the training, we was talking about some of the things, and I explained some of the things that I'd been through in the own company, and some of the people were in the room, and you could see on their face they genuinely did not even think that it would be perceived that way, and I didn't perceive it the way that I explained it. I said, but this is how it can be perceived. And one of them actually came up to me and actually apologized, like shook my hand, and it wasn't even someone I really got on with, to be honest, not because of anything like that, but just didn't like the individual. We just didn't get on. And, I thought to myself, well, wow, that shows you the level of training. And, that same individual actually turned around and was like, do you know what? It's not just that you said. There's other things that you said throughout the session that makes me think, and I never thought of the consequences of it. Because when I started reading off the monetary value, that's when people start generally like, ooh. So, we've all done something. We've all witnessed something. And I guess until you're educated differently or you understand how to treat things differently, there's going to be that opportunity for something to go wrong. So the next thing I want to cover is harassment and bullying. Let's just jump straight into it. So, harassment. The different sort of definitions, if you like, or one-liners. So, offensive comments, degrading comments, unwanted attention, intimidating behavior, or hostility towards others. These are some of the traits of somebody who is, harassing someone. Harassment occurs when someone engages in unwanted conduct which either violates another person's dignity or creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for another person. Unwanted conduct includes physical or verbal or non-verbal. So some examples: unwanted physical conduct or horseplay, including touching, pinching, pushing, and grabbing. Continued suggestions for social activity after it has been made clear that such suggestions are unwelcome. So that's trying to get someone to meet you outside for a drink, and they've said no. Sending or displaying material that is pornographic or that is some people may find offensive, including emails, text messages, video clips, and images sent by mobile phone or posted on the internet. Unwelcome sexual advances or suggestive behavior. Racist, sexist, homophobic, or ageist jokes, or derogatory or stereotypical remarks about a particular ethnicity or religious group or gender. Outing or threatening to out someone as gay or lesbian. Now, I've seen that actually once, which I actually thought that's not the most malicious thing I've seen, but it's up there. I really genuinely felt sorry for that person. And I think, those who associate themselves with being under either of those categories, I'll be honest, I've worked with gay people, and I found them to be really sort of, I don't want to say down to earth, but they're, one is still a very close friend to me. And I think to see the journey or the difficulty that they face sometimes is absolutely disgusting. I don't know. I'm really surprised that saying that, I don't know, I haven't been around this person for a few years. So if I go back to when I last was, 2015, no, maybe before that, maybe sort of 2012, whatever, I'm really surprised that people still thought it was an issue. And I think the irony is that these will be the same people that be happy watching, girl and girl action. It's not the same thing. So anyway, yeah. But that can be some really sort of difficult things for people. I wanted to make a point on that because I think people still treat, somebody being gay or lesbian as almost like a playground thing. It's just not right. That's somebody's livelihood. You don't know what journey they've been through. Offensive emails, text messages, or social media content, or mocking, mimicking, or belittling a person's disability. One of the things I've found is, and I don't know if people notice this, so myself, I have a knee problem. Doesn't prevent me from walking properly, but for some reason, and I don't know what it is, but if I see someone limping, I don't know why, but my body naturally feels like it needs to limp as well. And I think that is something to be very careful of. So I always, I notice it straight away because I've got a knee problem. So if I try and do anything different to walking, my body tells me that I'm doing something differently. So I'm very fortunate that way. But I think I do see many times where, I don't know, you might have someone who does a particular arm movement or something, and you can literally see two people around them doing the exact same movement. And I've seen this one individual who, they had a walking impediment, and it was quite an obvious one. And I don't know why, but again, it was a similar thing. People around him seemed to almost adopt the same pattern. And at first I thought, was it everyone just taking the mick? But then I thought to myself, no, because I don't think every single person would do it. And this person was fairly comfortable, and he said, I don't know why, he said it just seems to happen. He said, you'll be doing it one day. And I was like, no, I won't. And one day I did, and I just don't understand it. I think it was because it's almost like a sway movement that he had, and I think that's what it was. I think people kind of, obviously observed it, and the one time I did it, he just laughed and he was like, I told you. He said, it's a very catchy dance. Obviously he was quite comfortable. He understood, I guess in his world, he understood why or whatever. Not that I could ever work it out. Not that anyone else could work it out why we were doing that. But yeah. So, bullying. Now, bullying is a word that is thrown around so freely, in the not as in us in HR, but in HR we must hear it so often. This person's bullying me. This is bullying. And the first thing I always say to someone is, clarify your definition of bullying, or give me examples of. And I would say 99% of the time I get nothing back, and it's okay, maybe it's not bullying. Some people will actually say it's not bullying, it's harassment, which I'm surprised more people don't do, if I'm honest with you. That really surprises me. But usually it's like, oh, no, okay. Which, look, I think, look, let's go through the definition. So bullying is offensive, intimidating, malicious, or insulting behavior involving the misuse of power that can make a person feel vulnerable, upset, humiliated, undermined, or threatened. Power does not always mean being in a position of authority, but can include both personal strength and the power to coerce through fear or intimidation. Bullying can take the form of physical, verbal, and non-verbal conduct. Bullying may include And this is some examples: physical or psychological threats, overbearing and intimidating levels of supervision, inappropriate derogatory remarks about someone's performance, legitimate, reasonable, and constructive criticism of a worker's performance or behavior, or reasonable instruction given to workers in the course of their employment will not amount to bullying on their own. So I hope that's clear. I think for me, I don't think I've seen bullying, if I'm honest, because I think most of the stuff I see is harassment. It is harassment. I mean, I've been very fortunate that I've not seen many examples of. I would say I've been a victim of bullying, with the one manager I had as my last sort of management role when I was trying to get my sign off. If I think about it, the last two is exactly what that person did. But I've not witnessed it in terms of being given to me as a complaint to look into. Man, I don't know what happened, but somehow I deleted the whole of the section I just recorded. So now I have to record it again. So, this section is called Bantz, aka banter. Now, does anyone actually know what banter is? Or does anyone have a really good definition of it? Because I had to Google it. So, there was many different versions of it. And so this is the one that I rolled with for the case of this podcast. So, let's read it out. Banter is both a noun and a verb about talking. Okay? It comes from unknown origins. Always a good start. But even as a word, it is a word, it seems to be playful and teasing. Now that, to me, suggests something else is about to go down. You know what I mean? You can engage in banter with your friends, siblings, parents. I don't know if you can with your parents. And even good-natured strangers. I need clarity on what a good-natured stranger is. I ain't never heard of that. Obviously, in a diversity inclusion course, we're not running a course, podcast, I can't obviously single out a community, but the only example I can think of is, we're going to say a taxi driver. They're good-natured, and they have a joke. I don't know if anyone has clarity on what a good-natured stranger. Maybe I should have Googled that as well ahead of recording this. But there we go. I've highlighted this bit. Banter usually ends with everyone feeling better for the talk and verbal play. I've never heard of verbal play either. This might be exposing how I'm not going to say educated. I am educated. But I don't know what verbal play is. And better for the talk, I don't know. If you mug me off, I'm not quite sure I'm going to feel better for the talk. I don't know. Yeah. So I think the piece is that with banter, it may appear to have been taken and digested and something that the person's on board with, but that may not be the case, and it can lead to a claim. So I have seen it where an individual. Actually, I can't even talk about this one. No, I can't even talk about it. Give another example. So we had an individual who, for many, 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 many years, by the way, disclaimer, this wasn't my area, but many, many years, was called by a certain sort of nickname. It just had been the case, I believe, for about 15 to 20 years. Not to say that this was right or wrong, by the way, but I'm just saying that's how it was. And so This individual never once mentioned it to be a problem, as far as I know. Or, well, they never raised it formally, let's be honest. I'm not quite sure if they ever did. I wasn't around. I was still in school. But, and by the way, this wasn't my area, so I wouldn't have known anyway. But this person never made a formal sort of thing of it, so it never really came to light, as far as I'm aware. Until they ended up in a redundancy situation. Now, to be fair, the manager, I mean, I don't know how new or not new he was, but he wouldn't have been the first manager to have been around when this individual was, given that name, if you like. And so he would have inherited it and probably, as a new person, probably just rolled with it. Now, that's not to say it's correct. Like, for me, I don't know. If I walk into a place, whether it's a new team, new location, whatever, and I get wind of something that just doesn't sound right, I'm going to fucking call it out, right? So maybe the manager should have done that, but I guess I don't know. Don't know his circumstances. Don't know why he sort of joined in. But anyway, he did, because, why else? So I don't know how the criteria was applied in terms of who was at risk of redundancy or not. I don't know if it was selection or interview. But anyway, the individual ended up being made redundant. And at that point, being made redundant, that's when he raised the issue around the nickname. And the response was, not the official response, let's just put that out there, but the response was that it was, you guessed it, banter. So, that closes this off. This is usually a session that I run. It's actually one that I wrote. So look, just to be clear, if you're not impressed by this podcast, understand that this is where are we? It's probably about 45 minutes. Actually, I don't know. Where are we for time? Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, we're at 45 minutes. So yeah, the session that I run is 4 hours. And I've tried not to take from there. So look, to close this off, I want to get to a piece around the sort of work culture that would be the right thing in terms of making sure that as a business and as a HR professional that you're adopting an inclusive workforce and also on the lookout for the opportunities to be diverse as well. So the first thing to think about is your recruitment policy or process. So is your recruitment designed to actually incorporate diversity and inclusion into the workforce? So for example, if you have a workforce that is predominantly one sex or one age or one demographic, you would maybe think about putting in a percentage of candidates into the interview process of the opposite, if that makes sense. Now, that's a bit of a touchy one because when it comes to recruitment, you can't necessarily ask people's age, etc. But I think in 2020, well, don't know about in 2021, but in 2020 anyway, I've seen CVs with pictures, date of birth, all that jazz is there. So actually you could ensure that actually you're also trying to shortlist candidates who may be of a different to what your workforce is at the moment. I think one of the important things as well that we miss off is actually providing the data to people to say this is the actual demographic of the workforce. That's one thing I always did from when I was a HR advisor to a business partner. And that just helped us. I mean, we hardly moved the dial, if I'm honest. We're talking about 7% increase. But actually, when you look at the industry that probably was a big improvement. I think in my time there, we went from about something like 40 to like 70. But in terms of race, that was not so great. Age as well. But yeah, you'd actively look out for that. And I think you'd look at your internal promotions as well. I think something that goes amiss sometimes is actually you've got the diversity and inclusion within your actual workforce, but you're always looking for something else, or you're always looking for yourself. I think one of the things I identify with managers especially is that the best version for them is themselves. And I think it's not about that. It's very rare that you find a manager actually looking for their opposite. And I think if you do find that, celebrate it. Now, the opposite doesn't necessarily mean the age or the gender or whatever. It doesn't have to be a characteristic. I'm saying actually look at the opposite in terms of their behaviors as well. That's probably for a different workshop. Stop saying workshop. That's for a different podcast. But yeah. Look at your training. Some of the things... actually, I remember going back to the retail place, and we hired someone who they didn't even speak English. And actually, they didn't need to. But we did then have a bit of a stumbling block when it came to training. Even though the role didn't require English to do, it required English for the training. So yeah, that was a new one. But I think, when you're thinking about your training, another thing I've come across is, well, the person can't read or write. Now, for me, if they're able to demonstrate the understanding of the role or the demonstration of what they need to do, then I think that is okay for me. I remember in the retail place, head count of about 450. Not everyone English is a first language. We had people with learning difficulties as well. And, I remember doing like fire training as an example. The reality was some people just couldn't write out the answers. Some would try and then get upset for doing that. And I think, why am I going to make someone upset when I can actually just do it for them? And actually, as long as they can demonstrate they know what to do, so, they're able to identify the difference between the intermittent and continuous alarm, that does the job. The reality is they're able to leave the building safely, and they'd be able to. And actually, you know what? That individual, whenever there was a fire alarm, they were actually the one that was able to actually get people out, etc., etc. So let's not patronize people because they cannot do something. Let's assist. Think about the workplace environment. I think I mentioned it in the last one about flexible working or something. Think about, things like wheelchair access. Not only for your teammates, but also your customers as well. Because I don't think people think that either. How can your customer access you if they can't get in the building? Now, I'm not saying we have to go and build ramps everywhere. I'm just saying it should be a consideration. If you're having a refurbishment, is there not the opportunity to actually just get, you don't have to get a cement ramp. There's alternatives. So have a think about that. And then obviously in terms of the actual environment that you work in, have a think about how that can be made more accessible for people. The next thing is to have an open workplace, which encourages open discussions, encourages challenge. I think that's one of the things that definitely goes amiss. For me, I don't abuse my power. I think hopefully you guys can see that throughout the podcast. I don't abuse it. But one of the actual times I do is by being in the conversation. Because I think by being there and actually allowing people to make mistakes and allowing people, almost like mediation, but without formally sitting down, if you like, as a HR person in the room, really does help, I find. I think it allows people to challenge because they're not thinking, this HR guy's going to sack me. I actually encourage that they talk it out without being offensive. Or, I put the caveat out there. If you're not comfortable with what someone is saying, then feel comfortable to just say, right, I'm not happy with what you're saying. And the other person has to respect it. That's probably the only time I abuse my position. Because in that instance, you can actually give them the freedom to do that. So yeah. If there's a breach of the diversity or inclusion policy, then that needs to be handled straight away. If it's not acted on, the whole thing falls apart. So if you spot something, again, like I've said throughout, if something comes to light, if there's evidence to support it, witnesses or CCTV even in some instances, then make sure that is handled. The one thing I do see quite often is businesses refusing to allow part-time working, or just totally against it, like flexible working coming in and shift patterns and stuff like that. Now, that does restrict people, and that can create an associated claim. I think a lot of people miss that out. I mean, another example is, I know of a workplace where, they have limited parking spaces and they hold a raffle ticket for parking tickets. And I know someone who starts later in the day. So there's some parking left over for those who get there first. But if somebody can't get there for 8 o'clock because they've got child commitments with their child, and therefore they've put in a flexible working request that starts at 10 a.m., but then they haven't won the lottery to get the parking space, how are they ever going to get a parking space? Let that one sink in. Yeah, so there's examples like this as well that go on, and I think people just don't think. But yeah, the common one of like not allowing part-time. The last business I was in was, it's not that leadership was against it, I want to make that very clear, but at a department manager level, they were so against it. It was like sin, Somebody wants to go part-time. Yeah. The next thing I always suggest, and I've actually just suggested it as we're heading into January where I work, is to have an event calendar. But, and there's a big but with this, if you're going to do this, if you're going to have the event calendar, don't just pick the ones you want to celebrate. You have to do something for all of them. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do, but in a mature environment where you have a comms team, or you're able to do something as with a budget or whatever, then I would always suggest it. And I think the other thing to think about is be quite open about like trading of shifts. So, for example, Christmas Day means something to people who celebrate Christmas for religious beliefs, and for some religions it means absolutely nothing. And one of the things I did when I had the retail team, not that I had people working Christmas, but I did have people working Christmas Eve and Boxing Day, and I used to say to my team, and I had Muslims in my team, and I used to say to them, right, let's do a trade-off. So when Eid is available, now obviously Eid is a bit harder to sort of predict because it goes by the alignment. So you don't have a set date. In fact, it's kind of a declared date. But at a certain point, you'll have sort of a free 2-day window. But what I used to say was, especially in the driver team, to be honest, that's where most of the problem was. If those who wanted Christmas could do a double shift and cover, and then those who had, the Eid thing, if they could do the Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. And it was a happy medium. I don't know. That was 2008. Don't know if it's a thing you can do now. But I'd probably still try it. Because that also helps celebrate differences, and it also gives an awareness and an understanding. And actually, what I saw on the back of that was, for example, the Muslim drivers would actually bring in, not sweets, but like food and stuff, as a thank you. And that was really nice, and that's something they never did. And likewise, the driver team for Christmas would bring in sweets or whatever as well. So it created a really kind of nice atmosphere. So yeah, and look, it wasn't just exclusive. Those were just the only sort of two celebrated in the department. I think I would have still offered the same thing if I had different religions within the department. I would have had more flexibility, I guess, in terms of coverage. So, there is a bit of that as well. And then I think, leading on from that, celebrate the differences. I think I'm still surprised. Well, I say this because I haven't seen it in the last 2 companies I've worked for. but I know of it. I'm still surprised that people still question different sort of cultures and stuff. Like, really? I hear it in my wife's workplace. Like, obviously, being home working, I hear a lot on Teams, and I can't believe sometimes the questions that my wife gets asked. And we're in 2021, and this, you get assumptions made, you get questions asked, and they're just very sort of stupid. Is the only way. It's just fucking stupid. And you just think, really? Like, you haven't had a TV? So, I think having a culture where you have different faces, different images, different portrayals, different views shared at a company-wide level is always the right way to go about things. Keeping it to just the same people, I mean, that's not what I've witnessed here, but there are companies where it's literally the same people all the time that do the same thing all the time. And it's like, that's not representative of the workforce. And half the time, it's usually people in senior roles anyway. So when you do that kind of thing, I mean, where I am now, we've gone across the whole business and found people, got their views, got their pictures, etc. And that is how you celebrate differences. You make it visible, and that helps you attract talent, because what happens is when somebody goes on your website, if they just see one thing, of course they're going to be put off by it. So just be mindful of that. So that is the end of episode 4. Nothing else to add, really. So thank you for listening. Any feedback always appreciated, and we'll catch you on the next one.